This is where we fight. This is where they die. This is where we fight. This is where they die.
Welcome to the Spartan Boxing Radio Show. This is Dave Carr, your host, along with
Corlin Lawrence Stern Jr. Happy to be here, and I'm ready to get this started, disseminate this news properly.
Fantastic. We just went through the weekend with fights, and we had Errol Spence versus Lamont Peterson. I was really surprised how good Errol Spence looked. I had some doubts. I had some reservations about him, but he showed very well. Even though Lamont, he's been around the block and he's been putting on the ground by a few fighters. It was more of what Errol Spence did and less of what Lamont Peterson didn't do in that fight.
A lot of people are saying that Lamont Peterson's strategy was off, but I don't know, just based off of what you saw there. I don't know what he can pose and present to Errol Spence that would make him do any different. That was an incredible performance. The right jab is what really started things off. You know, with that high guard defense that Lamont was putting up, that right jab just opened everything up. Right jab followed by that straight left hand to the body. It was absolutely beautiful to me. Errol looked sharp. He looked fast. Not as slick as I would want him to look, but, you know, now this is his style. You know what you're going to get with him.
You know,
but all in all, I thought it was a good performance.
In my mind, I visualize Lamont Peterson as being the smaller guy than Errol Spence, and I was surprised to see Lamont looking maybe as big, or if not even bigger than Errol Spence. I was also surprised to read that they were both the same height, and I wasn't expecting that. And when I saw them in there, I saw Lamont was huge. The first thing that came to mind to me was, oh man, this guy, he's on something for this fight. But I don't think that was the case. I just think that he prepared himself really well and put up some muscle to try to fend off the attack that was going to come from Spence.
Lamont isn't a typical little guy. You know, he's not holding, like you said, he was holding a lot of muscle. He wasn't holding, any pudge a la Juan Manuel Marquez and Floyd Mayweather. Lamont looked great. He looked great on the scales. He looked great on fight night. He hydrated really well.
He did.
Really well.
He did.
Looked strong. He looked elusive. He looked fast. It looked like the speed was still there. He just didn't utilize as much of that.
I didn't see his jab.
He did when he fought Danny Garcia.
I didn't see his jab. He didn't try to box. He tried to fight fire with fire.
The thing is that he suffered for it eventually. But if he would have boxed straight away, then the ring would have got cut off immediately. I thought that would have made it easier for Errol Spence to just go ahead and do what he does. As soon as you show any kind of resistance, any kind of negative boxing, he's just going to cut off the ring, and the way that he cuts off the ring as a southpaw too it's great. He reminds me of a guy, think about like a horror movie. You go in this room and all of a sudden Michael Myers just pops up out of the corner. That's the way he is. Something like Triple G a little bit, to where you don't have a lot of room to breathe and you can't languish on the ropes, and you're not just going to comfortably box and circle. It's going to be a task for you. And so a guy is going to have power that he respects, and he's going to have insane stamina, because Errol's is through the roof. I haven't seen him tired in a fight yet.
Whoever his opponent is that's going to give him any kind of pushback is going to have to be somebody that is ready for 12 rounds, that has a lot of movement, and that can get some respect, because that was one of my questions in our first episode when we talked about Errol Spence's chin. Really hadn't been tested. I know that he got buzzed by some fighters before, but Lamont is not the biggest puncher, but he can crack, and he landed some flush punches on Errol Spence, and Errol just smiled and just kept coming. He wasn't even phased. I was surprised at that.
On one hand, it looks good, because we know, and we can probably speculate based on what's out there right now, and him standing up to Kell Brook, that Errol does have a chin. On the other hand, though, I don't like that. You know, his hand placement is real good, and his distance with defense is excellent. Absolutely excellent. Brings his hands back fast. He doesn't bring them back low most of the time. But the head movement is one thing that if he does travel up in the weight classes or if he does go up against a right heavy-handed guy, that could be his undoing. That's the only thing that I can see. But like I said, his style is his style. It's not like you're just going to get up out of bed one
Right.
day or go through a couple of training camps and just have superior head or head movement. This is something that's probably going to plague him, but hey, it's no such thing as a perfect fighter. No such thing.
He was very reminiscent of guys like Chavez Sr.,
Hmm.
guys that just came and they came to destroy. It didn't matter what you did. They had one mission, and that was to break their opponent down and end the fight.
Right. I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, because it's a guy that comes in and it's not about, he just comes in to break shit. That's fantastic. I love that.
The thing is that he has the matching attitude. That is his attitude. That is his personality.
Right.
Real no nonsense, very blue collar. You know, none of this hopping around and, you know, I might do this, and he's not vague, he's not cryptic, he's very direct. I like that. You know, what you see is what you get, and that's a lot of steak and potatoes. So fighters gonna have to digest this. I can see why these fighters like Danny Garcia, even Sean Porter, Keith Thurman, you know, why they're not answering the call.
He is open for shots. That's a given. He did get caught by shots from Lamont Peterson. One thing I notice is that if you feint him low, he does tend to drop his lead hand down, and he's open for a lead right. And he got caught a couple of times by Lamont. I decided to go back and look at the fights that didn't go to distance with him, and I noticed the same thing when he fought Ronald Cruz. Ronald Cruz was boxing him, and even though Ronald Cruz lost, he did hit Spence with some good shots. He still got broken down, but that's something that a good fighter with good movement can exploit. It would have to be a very big puncher to knock him out with that free shot. And it does concern me, him going forward once he starts going up in skill level, because fighting Lamont Peterson is not going to be the same as fighting Keith Thurman, and it's not going to be the same
Not at all.
fighting if he moves up to 154. He already, in one of the videos here that I was watching with Radio Raheem, he was calling out Canelo. And if Canelo gets a free shot like that,
Right.
it may not end well for Errol Spence.
If there's a gap, Canelo can really feel it really fast. If there's an opening, Canelo will drop something in there. He's not afraid to go to the body, to the head. And Canelo, with the uppercuts that he throws, those are hard, those are crisp, they're fast, and they're hard to detect. So that's one thing I would be worried about. But on the other hand, I do think that Errol does have a chance, and a real good chance against Canelo, because Canelo's motor is so bad.
The body work was excellent. He did get hit to the body by Lamont Peterson also, and it seemed to bother him. I don't know if you noticed it, but in one of the first few rounds, he got tagged also by a right to the body, and it kind of pushed him back, and he kind of waited a little bit and then came back in and continued his pattern.
You know, it's actually funny that you say that. When I was watching it, I was thinking, I always thought back to that Kell Brook fight. And Kell, when he went to the body, and it was very few and far between, but Kell actually had the tools and the equipment, and he had the physicality to stand up to Errol Spence. And he went to the body, and he would clinch too. Kell is very strong, and that's something that will wear out Errol. But somebody has to stay dedicated. And not only that, you have to be willing to take what he's giving you also. So it's real easy to get discouraged against Errol, because Errol's very determined. It's going to take a fighter that's just as determined in order to beat him.
What's coming back is not pitter patter. What's coming back is some really heavy shots. You have to think twice to open up and go to the body, knowing that you can catch a hook or a straight that's going to be a
Absolutely.
pretty hard shot. So I can
And
see
it
that.
doesn't help that he's a southpaw also, because if he's fighting these right-handed guys, if you're there on the inside, the way that you're escaping, you know, you're probably escaping right into his wheelhouse. He just kind of has to turn slightly and then boom, the right hook. He has a very good right hook. He is not afraid to throw it. When he threw it against Lamont, I think Derek James actually gave him the instructions. When he threw it against Lamont, Lamont really didn't stand a chance. He really didn't stand a chance.
What did you think about the stoppage?
If you pay attention to Barry Hunter, and you know, this isn't the first time that we've heard Lamont's backstory. You know, it's not the first
Yeah.
time that I've heard Barry Hunter call Anthony and Lamont Peterson's son. I kind of knew that it was going to happen by the way he was talking at the start of the seventh round. You know, if I have to come up here again and I'm not liking the way that it's looking, and that's too much dialogue, too much chatter. I knew that it was going to happen. I was thinking TKO. I didn't think that he would flatline Lamont like Lucas Matisse did, but I agree with it. He was taking a lot of punishment. Those eyes were swelling. You know, it was a good stoppage. It was a good stoppage. If you know who Barry Hunter is, if you know the way that he gets down, he's more of a not just a coach. He's these guys' mentor.
Yeah.
He's a motivator. He's so much more than that. So yeah, out of love, I definitely expected him to stop that fight. I agree with what he did.
I wasn't mad at the stoppage. I was upset a little bit about what was happening before the stoppage in the rounds before, because I didn't feel that Barry Hunter was giving Lamont any instructions. He was telling him, you know, I don't like how it's looking. Show me something. And do you have anything left? But there were no instructions for Lamont to go in and change something up, because what he was doing,
Right.
he was just going straight into the fire, and that wasn't working. It wasn't working. So as a coach, I would think, as a trainer, that you would try to vary the attack or change something in the plan so that maybe he has a better chance. Try something different and change it up. But I didn't hear anything like that, and
I heard very few instructions. He was saying, you know, you need to use the jab and everything starts off with that. That's relatively basic. Maybe this is just the speech of a guy that
Yeah.
has no plan because he kind of saw it unfolding right in front of his eyes.
right.
But at the same time, I mean, I don't know what he could have said. But at the same time, too, I've always said, and I've been very critical of Barry Hunter. They're not strategists. You know, those aren't exactly Emmanuel Stewart's over there.
He could have said stick and move. Box him, move around. Give him some lateral movement.
I think
Use your
he
jab.
did say that to a certain degree, not at the beginning of round 7.
Before the fight
Right.
end, for the last 2 or 3 rounds, there was just really nothing as far as instructions coming out from the corner. And I'm not mad at the stoppage. Lamont just didn't have anything to show. I mean, he was getting broken down. He was going to get stopped. He might have gotten hurt. He was saying, I got something left, but you could tell in his demeanor that he was beat. He was a beat fighter.
It was about to happen. You know, the inevitable was going to happen. I would actually, and a lot of people may disagree with me, but with somebody like Lamont who went in there and he gave it his all, with him actually taking the fight, I
Commendable.
agree. You know, it should
Commendable.
have stopped just like that. I don't want to see him spread out in the middle of the ring.
Spence was going through what Golovkin was going through, where guys weren't signing up to fight him. And the guys that did, had to be commended, because there were some pretty hard beatdowns from Golovkin to these guys. The Murrays and who else fought him?
Stevens and
Yes, Curtis Stevens.
Willie Monroe, and it's actually crazy now that I think about Triple G. Just kind of getting off on a tangent, but it's the same thing. And it might be the same thing with Spence. It may take a guy, maybe a guy moving up, maybe Mikey Garcia, which I doubt that's going to happen. A guy that's going to move up 2 weight classes and maybe expose or exploit some vulnerabilities.
Mikey Garcia.
In order for
Didn't
people to
Mikey
step
Garcia
in.
call out Spence?
He did. I'm just thinking about it. I mean, I think Mikey would get destroyed straight out. Let's just be for real. But Kell Brook, he did get destroyed against Triple G, but he actually opened the doors for these Danny Jacobs to come. Because you were right, he wasn't getting any fights. He wasn't getting any fights,
He wasn't
not
getting any
of
fights.
note. You know, these guys were really maneuvering around Triple G. And Kell Brook is the one that opened those doors and show signs of getting hurt. So now I want to fight him because if you remember, it was Kell Brook, and immediately after that, it was Danny Jacobs. So
That's right.
a smaller guy, a guy that no one would think would have a chance to maybe expose or exploit some vulnerabilities in Errol. In order for these other guys, these name guys, these Porters and Thurmans and, you know, those guys to fight him. Because the way it's going right now, yeah, it's looking like the same path Triple G was on.
Look, I was at the Mikey Garcia and Adrian Broner fight in Brooklyn. And from my point of view, it looked like Mikey Garcia was hitting Broner with little tiny shots. They weren't moving Broner at all. And that's
Broner
at
wasn't
one.
hurting the least bit.
Yeah,
He
that was
wasn't hurt at all.
at 140. I just can't imagine what Mikey Garcia could bring to the table other than move around for 12 rounds, basically run for 12 rounds, and try to land a jab and a body shot here and there. And that's about
Me
it
neither.
against Spence. I don't.
Me neither.
If the plan for the $3 million was to move up to 140 and then 147 and fight Spence, that's insane. That's suicide for Mikey Garcia.
Well, that's also what it tells me is that that's also a cash out.
It's a cash out. Maybe it's due to his age. He's not that old. He's what, 29, 31?
He might be 30. You know,
Yeah.
that's it. But I mean, you might want to even subtract a year and a half, 2 years, even though he was off for 3 years. Subtract that off of his age. He should be relatively fresh.
He should be pretty
hasn't
much
been in
at
these
his
wars.
peak. He should be at his peak right now.
Yeah.
At featherweight, when he was with Bob Arum, there was talk that Bob Arum wanted to fast track him up to welterweight to fight Manny Pacquiao. Now, I'm not too mad at that because Manny is not a huge welter. He's more of a junior welter, if anything. But when you have somebody that's walking into the ring close to 157 or 158 on fight night, that's not a small welter. That's a real welter. That's a large welter.
Right.
And
Right.
he did not look like his power came up with him to 140. I don't see anything coming up with him at 147. That's another 7 pounds. I just see a knockout.
That's insane, man. And the one thing that when you move up to welter like that, when you're as small as Mikey, you have to really pick your welterweights carefully.
Yeah.
So, like you said, Manny Pacquiao, okay, that's a big money fight, and he's an older fighter, so it may be worth it. Even though I would pick Manny Pacquiao going away in that fight, it may be worth it. That would be like Floyd Mayweather back in the day coming up to 154 and fighting a prime Andrade. Way smaller. Too much? I just think that would be too much. And the reward isn't there. The cash, to me, just isn't there in order to do that. Like you said, that would be suicide. I think that Mikey would get destroyed in that fight. But I'm saying, on the other hand, maybe this is what it will take for a little guy to come up and buzz Errol a couple of times. And then these guys will start coming out the fold because they see vulnerabilities. Maybe that's it. I highly doubt it, but we never know. That's why we have to see.
Now, going forward, the IBF announced a mandatory for Errol Spence with Ocampo, which is the third rank IBF challenger or fighter in their rankings. They don't have anybody ranked in first or second place. I don't know why they don't have anybody ranked.
I don't understand either.
Ocampo would be the next in line. To me, that would be the number one ranked or the mandatory. So I'm not mad at that fight. I haven't watched any tape on him yet, but I'm going to. If it's a mandatory he has next, great. But after that, I want to see him fight somebody like Keith Thurman, or if they can make the Crawford fight by then, I'm happy to see that. I just don't want to see him fighting somebody like Victor Ortiz or somebody like Devin Alexander, anybody like that after Ocampo. because that's just going to be a waste of
Well,
time.
I agree with you too. Now, Ocampo, like I said, I don't know anything about him, or like you said, I don't know anything about him either. And I think that that's the perfect. Errol did give an interview. I think it was with Radio Raheem, and he said that he wanted his next fight, and his next fight was going to be in Dallas. That's the perfect fight to put in Dallas. Don't send that to the Barclays.
Ocampo in Dallas would be great because
I
number one,
I think so.
he's a third rank,
That's perfect.
and he's from Mexico.
Right.
So
Right.
having a Mexican fight in Dallas against probably the number one ranked, soon to be number one ranked welter after his performance, I think that
Right.
I think that takes the ranking off of Keith Thurman since he's been off for so long. What about Lamont? Do you see Lamont
Yeah.
retiring already? Do you think Lamont will retire?
Ooh, the way that he was talking after that fight, the way Lamont was talking, I was really surprised at, he was saying it's something I would have to think about. I was like, wow. The only thing, because Lamont to me obviously has a lot more in the tank. He came in incredible shape. He looked great. He didn't look like a guy who was pulling his punches or he was noticeably old overnight. He didn't look like that. Maybe with these long layoffs that the weight of the politics of boxing have gotten to Lamont Peterson. So maybe that's why he was talking about it. But he did say that he wasn't going to make a rash decision, out of emotion at the time. But I did see him hint to Jim Gray that, he would have to think about it. I was like, wow, wow. I don't know. We can only speculate, but when I heard that, I was like, man, maybe these layoffs and politics and
The purse?
this, that, and the other. Yeah, maybe the purse, even though I think he got paid $600,000 for this fight, which
Yeah.
isn't bad.
Not too bad.
Maybe this is what got to him. I think Lamont should fight on, though. I want him to. And I actually think, just based on what's out there other than Errol, I think he can win a title again.
And then there's this guy.
Now, Garcia's, Lomachinkos, the Spences, the Keith Thurmans, the other Garcias, the Mikeys, and all that. Whoever, it doesn't matter. I done fought half of them already, so it doesn't matter.
That being my favorite fighter, Terrence Crawford.
Boy, TC.
There's
I love it.
no hiding that fact that Terrence Crawford is my favorite fighter. I know Spence is your favorite fighter. I can't wait
Right.
for the day that these two guys get in the ring together. It's going to be butterflies in my stomach. It's going to be pillows going flying through the room. That's what I love about boxing. It's the
Right.
excitement of seeing
Now,
a huge matchup like that.
especially if this fight happens late this year or maybe even early next year, it would be absolutely incredible.
That
And I
would
don't
be
know
the
what
right
happens yet.
time. I would think probably mid next year I would be fine with because they're both in their prime. Crawford is just about peaking right now. He's just about right at that point where he's going to be coming over the peak. Anything later than next year, I think it would be a disservice to both fighters. I still have Terrence Crawford as a favorite in a fight with Spence. Based on what I saw on Saturday, I still think that Terrence Crawford can outbox him. Maybe I'm not saying now that he can knock him out, like I was saying
Right.
before, but I still think he can outbox him. But it's almost a toss-up for me. But I still give the edge to Terrence Crawford. I'm sure you disagree.
Well, I don't want to say I disagree because I do think that Terrence Crawford can outbox Errol. But you already know that Errol doesn't have that I'm going to box in my game plan mentality.
Yeah.
So he's going to make it into a dogfight. And Terrence Crawford is willing to get into dogfights, even though he's willing to box, but he's willing to get into dogfights unnecessarily. That's where I'm looking at it, and I think that's where the odds even right there.
What I like is that his two trainers make one really good trainer. Between both of them, every fight that I've seen them, they've been able to devise a really good game plan a plan of attack to tailor to their opponent at that moment. It was a completely different fight from watching him fight a tall Ndango than it was to watching him fight a tall Postal. Two different performances, and they were designed that way, and he followed the plan to the T on how they designed it. The wrench is going to be thrown when maybe the plan doesn't work, and that may happen in a Spence fight. Do they have a plan B? Are they going to be able to have him adjust effectively against a Spence who's going to be coming with guns a-blazing into the ring?
These guys, Ndongo, even though he's tall in stature, very long, Victor Postal, same type of build, they're not bigger than Terrence Crawford. Terrence Crawford is a thicker dude. He's stronger. And I thought that the strength was noticeable in both of them, especially with Victor Postal. Every time he hit Victor Postal flush, Postal would flop around and, awkwardly move after that, which means that the power got to him. Errol isn't Thierry Jean or Felix Diaz, Yuriorkis Gamboa. He's not these guys. Errol with size alone is just going to present a completely different problem to Terrence Crawford. And I need to see how Terrence Crawford is going to be able to do with size, when they get in close quarters. Getting in close quarters with Felix Diaz is way easier. Felix Diaz with 6 knockouts is way easier because you can drop your hands and, stick out your tongue. Or did he do that to Hank Lundy? Yeah, he was doing that to Hank Lundy, sticking out his tongue and clowning and, doing this and getting into those firefights. But I told you also earlier, boxing is going to be very hard for 12 rounds also. I don't see Errol just getting peppered with jabs and an occasional right hand and, you're just switch hitting on him and boxing and turning him. I don't see that happening to him for 12 rounds. If Errol, as evidence in the Kell Brook fight, if Errol gets down 2 rounds maybe, fighting with urgency, he's actually fighting with urgency, opening bell. But he's going to fight with some urgency there. And are you going to be able to stick with the game plan and then improvise at the drop of a dime? Because that's what you're going to have to do. I love his attitude. He was talking about everybody, Lomachenko and Mikey Garcia and Danny and Thurman and Spence. And I do think that he's the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter right now. And I do not like people disrespecting him by forgetting it, by even trying to consider other people. I think that's fair to him, but
I did say that whoever won the Lomachenko-Rigondeaux fight would get the number 1 spot. And I think that until Crawford beats his next opponent and shows a strong performance, I can't just throw him on there without a performance in between. So
absolutely.
For now, I still have Lomachenko up there. Crawford is really close. And if he has a strong performance against Horn and runs him over, then that's it. I'm moving Crawford up to the number 1 spot. I'm super biased about it, but I'm trying to measure that.
Right. I don't think so, because Crawford to me is number 1 right now. Right now. I can't see anyone being better than him. I haven't seen anyone show the versatility that he showed. Undisputed champion at 140, which is extremely hard to do these days because of the politics. I can't see it.
The politics make it difficult. Do you think the politics are going to be an impediment for Crawford Spence?
It'll be an impediment, but I think the politics.
Who's going to be the impediment? Who do you think is going to be the impediment? You think it's going to be Bob Arum?
Arum, man.
Come on, be honest.
I told you, it's Bob Arum.
Bob is not afraid to make a fight if there's money to be made.
Bob isn't afraid to make a fight when he has the upper hand. But I think that Spence's star is shining brighter than Terrence Crawford's right now. And I think that Spence's star is shining brighter than Crawford's just ultimately, just with his personality and what he does and the way that he gets pushed and marketed, and with the way that he accepts that limelight. So, no, Bob is going to notice that. Do you think that Bob would be willing to send Crawford over to any PBC affiliate for Showtime?
No.
And see, that's what I mean.
But I do think that Bob would be willing to do a pay-per-view because this fight, if any of the fights out in the welterweight division, this is the one that deserves a pay-per-view event because I think that the fans would buy it. I think the fans would want to see it. And I think that whether it's through ESPN
You know what?
pay-per-view, or whether it's through Showtime pay-per-view, or whether it's a collaboration between both of them to do a pay-per-view, I think that that's the way this fight is going to get made, and that's why I think it's going to get made, and it's not going to be much of an impediment in as far as financially speaking, because I think that they understand that there is money to be made in this fight, and if they make it right, then they're going to make some money.
The only reason I say that it's going to be an impediment, though, is I look at Terrence Crawford as the new kid on the block. You know, the guy in the division, he's there. I guarantee. And the weigh-in is going to be real important with him versus Horn. But I think he's plenty big enough. I think that he makes weight easily. I don't know how easily Errol makes weight. And I don't want people to take that as an excuse, but Errol he says it openly. He says, I walk around in the 180s sometimes, you know, when I'm letting myself get heavy. Bob looking at this very closely because Crawford is his new Floyd Mayweather, without the personality, but with the skills. I can see him looking at it very closely and maybe milking it into late 2019. You know, seeing if there's any vulnerabilities or seeing how Errol makes weight. Errol, he doesn't have an ounce of fat on him at 147. Not an ounce. Not 1 ounce. No water in him, nothing. He doesn't look drawn. He still looks comfortable. He still looks happy. He doesn't look disgruntled like Canelo used to when he used to make 154. But I can see if you're pushing this another year, you know, this is now a 28, 29-year-old man making 147 pounds. It's hard to do. Hard to do. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on it.
Well, I hope it gets made. I want to see the fight. I think it's going to be a mega fight by the time it gets made. Hopefully not past next year. It has to be. It has to get made. I hope there's no issues and no
injuries or anything crazy
or injuries or things like that, which can affect a fight like this being made, or any promotional squabbles between the fighter and their promoter, whether it's on the Spence side, which has already happened, or whether it's on the Crawford side, which could potentially could happen. The same thing happened. I remember back when we were waiting for De La Hoya versus Trinidad. Trinidad was for about a year or two involved in a squabble with his promoter, with Don King, until they were able to resolve the issues, and then they made the fight. So I hope it gets made, and I hope we get a great fight, and I hope Crawford wins. Sorry. and I'm gonna be there.
I hear you. I hear you talking, man.
One of the other main events was the Easter versus Fortuna fight, which ended a bit controversial. I think it was close enough that it wasn't that bad of a call, but one of the judges really did have it wrong. And I didn't score the fight. I watched it, and I just from the eye test, I thought that Fortuna did pull it off, but he had a point taken away from him. I don't think it was justly, but they took it away anyway. It wasn't as much as what he did. He did box very well. He used his skills very well. He's a talented fighter, even though he's small. But it was what Robert Easter didn't do in the fight. He didn't fight tall. He basically shriveled every time that Fortuna would come in, down to Fortuna's size. He wasn't using his jab effectively. He's a guy that is, almost 6 feet tall, fighting at a very low weight. He wasn't able to prevent Fortuna from coming in and keep him at a jab's length. It was surprising at the end that he basically announced that the reason why the fans were booing was because he didn't knock out Fortuna. And Fortuna flat out called him a liar in Spanish. Before I'd want to see him with Mikey Garcia or with Linares, I wouldn't be mad at seeing a rematch on this fight. And I think that traditionally this is what would happen if you had a controversial ending in a fight, back in the day. They would have an immediate rematch. Nowadays, it's a little bit different. They just kind of like move the fighter along and kind of brush it under the rug as, he won. It's a W, so who cares?
And I don't like that.
I don't like that either. I don't like it. I want to see a rematch.
Clean that up immediately. Don't let it rest and don't let it fester. I've told that this is probably about 3, maybe 4 close type fights in a row for Robert Easter. Richard Comey, it was the same exact thing that happened with him.
Yeah.
I thought that fight was a draw, but Comey hasn't had any sniff of, the notion of a rematch. Dennis Shavkov, I thought he outboxed Robert Easter, and no talk of a rematch, no talk of anything. And then this one, this is crazy. I'm taking the point deduction into account. So I thought that Fortuna lost by 1 round. Or what is it, 114, 112, or whatever. I thought Fortuna won more rounds, but with that point deduction, he lost the fight. I'm cool with that. But this was a draw. This was definitely a draw to me. I think that they need to do it again. But Robert Easter, and this is why I talk about that Headbangers Gym, what do they do from an X's and O's standpoint? And this is from top to bottom. Obviously, their top guy is Lamont Peterson. And strategically, they're not really telling him to do anything. So Robert Easter, I mean, hey, he's kind of fallen by the wayside because of that. And I put a post on the page saying that he needs to just watch Tommy Hearn's film over and over again.
Yeah, I saw that. And because he has the height.
He has the feet. He has the height. He has everything. And when Robert Easter actually does throw his jab, he throws it perfectly. He throws it perfectly when he throws it. But I'm not understanding why he doesn't throw a jab, flex a jab, move. You only stand in the middle of the ring and try and trade and, do all of that when, now you're having trouble with your opponent closing the distance. Or maybe he's slipping the jab. Then you show your skills to where you're going to go shoulder to shoulder and now you're in that shoulder roll or whatever. But whatever he's doing, that's not working. His team isn't working.
What was surprising was that Easter was throwing his shots and he was overcommitting so much that he was missing the shot, and Fortuna was tagging him with the counters. He was missing a shot, and Fortuna was shorter and shorter reach, was hitting him flush with the shots.
That should never happen when you're that tall. You don't have to overcommit like that.
And when you're at that level,
tall one.
When you're at that level fighting, you should never overcommit so much, especially with somebody so short in front of you.
I really just don't understand it because Robert Easter, it's not like he has his feet in the mud and, he has good feet. He has good everything. His attributes are good. I just don't understand it. I don't understand how he can get into this type of fight. And really his days are numbered. I remember looking at Paul Williams at 147 pounds. And I was like, okay, he's good. He's very high volume. He's big for the size, big for the weight. But it's a matter of time before something real bad happens. And that real bad came in the form of Sergio Martinez absolutely flatlining him in the middle of the ring on his stomach with his eyes open. It's going to happen to Robert Easter. He has the same body type. I don't think that he has that punch resistance either. When, of course, his body is going to get tired of making the weight and he has to move up to 140 pounds, it's going to be a guy there, maybe like a Regis Poirier, that's absolutely just going to hit him flush with one shot and he's going to lay him flat.
I like Regis Prograis a lot. I think that he's going to do a lot of good things at 140. He may even take over 140.
I think Regis Poirier is a fight that Mikey wants no parts of.
I agree.
And you know what? Mikey, in the position that he's in right now, won't really have to look in Regis Poirier's direction. Just because he can play him off as a little kid. You got to prove yourself. You got to do this. And you just moved up. And, Mikey can do that at this point right now. But I can't see that fight happening ever.
But I would rather take my chances against Prograis than go fight Spence if I were Mikey Garcia.
Unless you're trying to cash out and you're gonna fight a guy like Pacquiao real quick, make a boatload of money, maybe $10 to $12 million, and Pacquiao makes about 25, and then you bow out the game. I understand that. I really do understand that. But going back to Robert Easter, that style isn't going to hold up. Someone's really going to catch him, and they're going to catch him bad. I'm looking at just his body type. He might be strong, but he just looks so frail. once he gets hit real flush from a fully leveraged punch, it's over.
He was hurt by
It's over.
Fortuna. Fortuna had him. He could have. Fortuna could have stopped him. I think the round ended, and
Yeah.
he had to go back to his corner. But he was putting the hurt on Robert Easter in one of the rounds.
Well,
And
and lucky Fortuna's coming up from 126 or 130.
yeah,
This isn't this isn't a guy that's naturally 135 pounds. He's coming up.
he's a featherweight. Fortuna's a featherweight.
Maybe we can even say that Fortuna was out of shape because he didn't even make weight. He didn't even make weight. So
Right.
maybe we can say that, and that's shame on Fortuna. Fortuna should have made weight.
Well,
So whatever
Fortuna said
happened to him, I don't have
Fortuna
any
said he
sympathy.
didn't have enough time to prepare for the fight. He got the notice he had very short notice. Yeah, Easter rebutted and said that he had gotten more notice than Easter got for the fight, but that I don't buy that. If Easter said a lot of
Uh,
things that were pretty
No,
pretty
I don't buy
iffy.
that at all. Because at first, after the weigh-in, Fortuna blamed the weather, saying that I'm not used to this weather, which is absolutely insane. I understand that he's from the Dominican, but that's absolutely insane. You got to get it together, man. Come on.
Where did they
But
fight?
Easter he needs to make. They fought in New York.
Well, that may be an issue.
This guy, man,
If you,
dude, they have so many resources that are
yeah,
put out for him. This guy could literally go on a bike in a sauna. I don't want to hear
yeah.
any of that.
There's plenty of
Whatever,
armories,
whatever he says, I'm not buying that.
plenty of indoor tracks in New York.
It's crazy. That's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Absolutely, it's plenty of everything in New York.
But I enjoyed his
Yeah.
post-fight interview. I thought it was great, and I think on that alone he should get a rematch because it was entertaining. So,
Yeah, absolutely. He said stop lying. Told him to
yeah,
shut up.
he called him
And
embustero.
that's exactly right. And he's right to a certain extent. Honestly, the fight was very sloppy. That wasn't a clean fight.
No,
Neither guy looked good. Neither guy looked good. Easter probably because of his strategy, and then Fortuna maybe because he was fighting a taller opponent and he was just kind of doing what he had to do in order to land punches. But that wasn't a clean and crisp fight. Robert Easter, I don't understand. I don't understand. But I'm telling you, this is an issue. Keep your eye on it. This is an issue with that Headbangers gym,
where's that gym
with
at?
with guys having to in DC. That's in Washington D.C. And I think all of them train over there. You have Broner, he's trained over there. Lamont and Anthony, of course. Robert Easter. I think Gary Russell Jr. hails out of that gym too. And these are all guys with glowing physical gifts,
Yes,
but they're not
and
maximizing
and
anything that they have. You know,
overinflated heads too.
and if you notice, with the exception of Lamont, maybe think about Robert Easter and Adrian Broner. They kind of fight the same.
Yeah,
They don't. They give too much away. Give away too much distance. Get into these firefights. They don't move their feet enough.
they
They're
don't
not
move their
boxing
feet.
enough, even when they have all the tools to box. I'm just not understanding. And like you said, overinflated heads, the indiscipline, throughout that whole gym. What I think is that they give good advice to amateurs. They motivate boys to become men, but I don't think that they can motivate men. They can't move them. And these guys have been with them for a long time, since they were 8, 9, 10 years old. Tank Davis is another one that trains out of there.
My
And
God.
you already know the problems that Tank Davis has. Tank is great physically. He's so fast, so strong, has power, and he just can't put it together game plan wise
Yeah.
in order to, for me to consider him as elite. It's something's going on at that gym. These aren't the Emmanuel Stewards out there.
Apparently, Broner, did he switch trainers? Did he not switch trainers? He's giving mixed
He did.
messages.
He went to, I think he's with Devin Alexander's trainer now, which is, I, Devin Alexander's trainer. He's a good trainer, but I don't know if that's going to help Broner. I don't know what helps Broner really at this point. He's just one of those guys. I have to see it. I have to see it. I can't even speculate with him. If he does this and if he gets this guy on his team, he's a live wire. He's not. I can't really see him listening to anyone. What I'm thinking about with Broner, and it'll be completely against everything that he stands for. But Broner needs to be with somebody like Abel Sanchez, because Abel Sanchez is going to get his ass in shape. That's just number one. And he's going to go back to the fundamentals. That's what it is. It's nothing sexy about these Abel Sanchez trainers. They're pretty basic when it comes down to it, but these guys are in shape and they're ready for 12 rounds. Broner, I don't even know if he's going to make weight. That's the thing. He doesn't need to be with anyone who's going to coddle him. Maybe even Virgil Hunter, because he's going to tell him the truth about himself. And hopefully Broner can take it. But what he's doing right now and what they're doing right now over at that DC gym, that's not working.
I would like to see Broner with Ronnie Shields. Ronnie Shields, I think, has the temperament to tell Broner, listen, you either do this or your career's up. To listen to me.
Well, it's funny. I actually thought about Ronnie Shields, but I'm going to tell you, Jamal Charlo trains with Ronnie Shields over in Houston. Broner doesn't need Houston. I love Houston to death, man. Broner doesn't need Houston. Too many spots to party. Too many strip clubs. Broner doesn't need Jamal Charlo, because I've seen him do interviews with them and they act like they're friends. Broner needs to go to some remote location. He needs to go in that freezing ice lake that Lomachenko jumped in, and he needs to train with him. That's what he needs.
He needs to go to Russia like Rocky
that.
IV.
He needs to go in a place.
Train in the
right,
igloo.
like Rocky IV, and stay there. He needs to go on that remote island that Roberto Duran went to when he had to train. It went half crazy. He needs to be there. Any kind of distractions anywhere on the East Coast, Broner just has too many friends, So Abel Sanchez, he does his training over at Big Bear. That's where Broner needs to be, where there's a bowling alley. Then he can go over there and go to the gas station, and that's his free time for the day, and stay in a cabin and come out, and he comes out an animal, a conditioned animal. That's what he needs. Other than that, man, I have no hope for Broner. I have no hope for Broner. He doesn't need to be anywhere else. He can't be where the weather is good. This guy just has too much distraction, too much temptation for him. He can't do it. He can't do it. So that's what he needs. But all those fighters out that gym, they need a massive overhaul.
I think Broner needs the marvelous Marvin Hagler training camp. Go seclude yourself, train by yourself, put the boots on and run 20 miles a day and get ready, get in shape. No distractions.
I remember him breaking out training, and he just looked incredible for about 12 to 18 minutes. And then after that, he just was like, I don't want to train anymore. Maidana's going to get his ass kicked and, this, that, and the other, and flexing for the camera and talking about shoes. And this guy's crazy. He really is crazy. The way that they portray him in these interviews, that is really him. That's what he does. But he can't be. This guy can't even be in the city, man. You got to save him from himself. You just have to seclude him. Shot at in a different state. I think that car was probably following him from what he gets shot at in like Kentucky.
Yeah.
This is crazy. This guy's he's nuts. And obviously I think there's something else going on there. There has to be a drug issue, an alcohol issue, because he's actually, if you look at his facial features, even his body, he's aged really fast.
Yeah.
Real fast. Too much partying.
Yeah, I remember seeing a picture he posted of him with his boys at, I think it was a strip club. And what I noticed was in one of his hands was a big bottle of booze. Right away, you can see he's drinking. He's got to be drinking.
Oh yeah.
And the sad part is that all that money he's flashing and all the attention he's getting, all that is going to eventually go away, and then it's just going to be him and his problems. So a lot of people go different ways when things like that happen, and he would strike me as somebody that would. He's already mentioned that he's considered to commit suicide and go that route. maybe to get attention,
Sure.
but somebody who ends up losing everything after having all that he's had, it wouldn't
Mhm.
surprise me they would try and try to take that route out.
Mhm.
And nobody's really going to care. That's the sad part about it.
You know, I think that Broner has what it takes mentally to not commit suicide, but I wouldn't be surprised if you're looking at 2023, 2024. This guy's like a fat roly poly 168 pounder.
Drug
I
user
wouldn't be surprised. Maybe
in
after a long
rehab,
layoff, maybe after even a jail stint,
jail stint.
unfortunately. You know, I
Yes.
can see him doing that, being a rolled up 160 pounder. They maybe 168, or saying how he's back and he's rededicating himself to boxing and he's learned from his mistakes, kind of like Zab Judah used to do. Even though he pretty much on target on weight, because he has pretty good genetics, but you see Broner's dad; those genetics are forgiven. So I'm looking for that to happen. Just fighting in a weight class he's not supposed to be fighting in, and he's not Broner anymore. That's what I can see happening to him. I hope not, but his his resume, man, his everything that he's done up until this point, it's just not looking good, and it's the culmination of something real bad happening,
It's
real
sad. It's
bad,
sad. I
because you can
really
tell he
liked
hasn't
this
learned.
guy when he was in the
He's trying
lower
to,
weights and he was, and then something
yeah,
changed. As soon as he started getting those $1 million purses, his complete demeanor
that's it.
changed, his attitude changed, his interviews that he was having, that I'm taking care of my family, I'm taking care of my mom, I'm doing this for my kids. All that started to
Yep.
change, and you started to see all the friends started to hang out. The
Yeah,
man
about billions and
about
band
billions,
camp and all that.
Bandcamp,
That's
that's it.
crazy, man.
All that stuff, such a huge distraction. And at the level that you're trying to fight, he keeps saying, and I heard him recently again saying that my mixtape or my record just dropped, and people don't know that I used to, I've been in music all my life too, not just boxing, and they think that it's a
Mm.
distraction, but it's not. But it really is.
It's actually crazy. You talk about a mixtape and a record label. If I came up on a lot of money right now,
Oh, you'd have your
this is
own.
what
You'd have your own
I would
record.
even. That's a sinkhole. That's a sinkhole,
It
man.
is.
You're just hemorrhaging cash. You're hemorrhaging money. You talk about a record label. That to me is, okay, that's a hood kid, but that is an ignorant
He's
person.
stroking his ego right now with the money that he has.
He's sitting here with, 6 and 7 kids and all that. Like I said, look at him in about 2024, 2025. You're going to see him at about 168, you know, something like that, fighting tax issues and child support
But even
payments.
if you're
It's going
from
to
the
happen.
hood, compare that to Crawford and the image that Crawford portrays. He's got his family, he's got his home, he invests his time in productive things and things with the family. Every time
Right.
I look at his live videos, he's watching his kid wrestle, or they're out hunting or
Yeah,
fishing.
it's with the same people.
He's with
But
the same people.
Crawford, I'm going to tell you, Crawford also does live in Omaha. So that's an easy way to just he's kind of a beneficiary of geographically where he's at. Um, so his temptation, he would have to drive whatever, 3 hours, 3.5 hours, 4 hours down the street and go to like Kansas City. But you could tell he's just not wired like that. He's just like, I'm gonna go and train, and he knows what got him here. Broner, man, I'm telling you, this guy, and the thing is about Broner, unfortunately, that's gonna keep him afloat is his big personality. People are gonna want him to do something in front of the camera every single time. And he's gonna take the bait and he's gonna do it, and that's gonna hurt him every single time until he realizes it. But I'm tired of talking about Broner like he's this young guy. He's in his upper 20s. He's what, 28 years old? Look at guys that are younger than him. Canelo Alvarez. Canelo, even though he's a diva, he has it figured out. These guys, Crawford has it figured out. Errol has it figured out. Sean Porter, they have it figured out. Broner hasn't had it figured out now. He's never gonna figure it out.
Something that surprised
it's
me
over.
is
It's over, man.
Crawford, as young as he is, he actually had sat down with Warren Buffett to talk about money and talk about the wealth that he was going to come into. That's surprising, and
I did not know that.
That's incredible. That's incredible to hear that such a young fighter. It tells you where his focus is. His focus is in fighting, making money, and not going broke, saving and protecting what he's earning now, so that he doesn't have to worry about it later. Not a lot of fighters do that. The smarter ones are.
I did not know that.
Yes,
man. Hats off to him for him to go up and and actually have a conversation. That would be an honor, to me, to go up in front of a guy
that
with
guy's
a wealth of knowledge like Warren Buffett.
Oracle of Omaha. That guy is my personal hero in finances.
Absolutely.
It shows you where his mindset is. It shows you that he's got some priorities in front of him that he's focused on, and he's not willing to sacrifice them. Or
he has his eye on the prize.
I wanted to see Broner against a lot of people. I wanted to see Broner against Matisse. I wanted to see Broner against Pacquiao. I wanted to see a Broner against several fighters, and it just never materialized, and it was just a whole bunch of dead fights in front of him that happened, and plus his losses every time he tried to move up in competition. It hasn't happened. So
those days are over with.
If Broner Crawford happened now, it would be the end of the career for Broner.
It couldn't happen now. Obviously, I would just want Terrence Crawford to do what he does and just go ahead and massacre the guy. But man, maybe we can bring up the suicide topic again if he fought Terrence Crawford. That'd be ridiculous. It'd be ridiculous. Just too much. It would be too much.
And with that, we end our second episode of Spartan Boxing Radio Show. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spartan Boxing. Follow us on Twitter at Spartan Boxing. Look for us on Facebook under Spartan Boxing Radio. Tune in next week for our third episode. We will be talking about the 154-pound weight class and also the 160-pound weight class. The Charlo brothers, Erislandy Lara, Canelo Alvarez, Gennady Golovkin, Danny Jacobs.